Thank you for joining us for our 7th episode of Helping Questions. I'm Dr. Gigi Luk, a Helping Questions host. In today's episode, we will have the opportunity to ask Professor Diane Lillo-Martin our 7th Helping Question. Professor Diane Lillo-Martin is a professor of linguistics and a senior scientist at Haskins Laboratories at the University of Connecticut in Storrs, United States. Diane's research is groundbreaking and absolutely fascinating and covers a wide range of topics that go from better understanding the human faculty of language to investigating how different spoken and sign languages, with a special focus on American Sign Language, are processed and acquired throughout the lifespan. Her work on bimodal bilingualism, which we'll learn more about today, is especially noteworthy. Please take a seat and stay with us as we get to hear more from Diane about whether communicating using both spoken and sign languages makes someone a bilingual.
Welcome, Diane, to the 7th episode of Helping Questions. We're so excited to have you as our guest and to be able to discover together fascinating scientific facts about bilingualism together. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Well, you're very welcome. It gives me a lot of pleasure to be able to participate in this. And thank you very much for inviting me to be part of your episode.
Thank you. Considering the groundbreaking contributions that you have made to help us better understand what it means for both children and adults to learn and communicate using both sign and spoken languages, we really couldn't think of a better scientist to ask our 7th helping question. Should we jump right in?
Sure, let's do it.
All right. Okay, so great. Then Diane, based on your experience, knowledge, and expertise, could we consider people who are able to communicate using both sign and spoken languages to be bilingual?
Well, this is a great question. And let me start by clarifying what we mean when we talk about a sign language. So if we talk about the natural sign languages that develop and are used in deaf communities, these are languages that are full, complete, expressive languages that are distinct from the spoken languages that are used around them in that community. So in the US, for example, American Sign Language is the sign language that is used in the deaf community. And spoken English, of course, is used in the greater majority. In Norway, Norwegian Sign Language is used alongside spoken Norwegian. So when we consider these natural sign languages that are used in the deaf communities, we know that they are grammatically and linguistically distinct from the spoken languages used in the areas. So of course, yes, then the people who use these languages are bilinguals. They are people who are using languages in two modalities. So we often call them bimodal bilinguals, modality referring to the fact that they use the hands, face, body, and eyes, as opposed to spoken languages that are using the mouth and the ears. And of course, spoken languages are also multimodal. We know that hearing people using spoken language, gesture, etc., but we generally distinguish between the modalities, the primary modalities of spoken languages versus sign languages. Sign language users who are also users of a spoken language are considered bimodal bilinguals. And it's also important to recognize that within that category, there are a number of different subcategories. Some of them are deaf people who use the sign language, and they also primarily use the written version of the spoken language rather than speaking it themselves. This may be the case if their hearing is such that they're pretty much unable to learn the spoken part of the language, but they can learn how to read and write. And so those people are still using the spoken language in its written form alongside the sign language. Other deaf people do use the spoken language as well as the sign language. And there are a lot of hearing people who will use both of them. In some cases, those are people who grew up with a family that used the sign language, such as a family with deaf parents. And so they grew up using the sign language as well as a spoken language. And those are the bimodal bilinguals that have been involved in some of the research studies that I've done. There are, of course, also contexts in which people might learn sign language as a second language. Somebody who maybe uses a spoken language first, and as a second language, they learn a sign language. And we tend to call them M2L2. So they are learning their second language in a second modality. So there's lots of different contexts in which people may have use of both a sign language and a spoken language.
Well, Diane, this is fascinating, and thank you so much for providing this overview and helping us also understand the different categories and experiences with these two modalities, no, of these many beautiful varieties of different languages. Then I was wondering, considering the incredible career you have and all the experience that you have, I'm sure many people have asked you, Diane, do you have some tips, some recommendations as to what we can do to help support bimodal bilingualism inside and outside the family context? I was wondering if we could pick your brain a bit.
Well, that's also a great question. So one important factor is that about 95% or so of children who are born deaf or hard of hearing actually are born into hearing families who don't know anything about deafness or sign languages before their child is born, or they may have some familiarity with it, but not very much. And in those cases, the families really need to get information quickly about how they might communicate with their deaf child. In some cases, they decide that they want to pursue using spoken language only. That's something that's often recommended by early intervention or by doctors or by others. But we have seen that the bilingual approach, the bimodal bilingual approach, can be very effective as well. And that if the family decides they want to include a sign language, then what they can do is find opportunities for all of the family members, caregivers, to learn a sign language. In some contexts, that can be a little bit challenging, but nowadays with the technology, there are more ways to access information on the web or through Zoom or in other ways. So families can start to learn to sign themselves. It's a good idea. It's really important actually for them to also make connections with the deaf community so that there are multiple people who are communicating with the children and multiple ways in which input is provided, because we know that that's always very important for language acquisition, and especially for bilinguals. They need to have a variety of types of input, and particularly it's important for them to have input from peers as well. So those are some of the steps that can be taken within families. Of course, there are families that have deaf parents with hearing children or with deaf children. In those cases, they generally are going to be, if the parents are signers, they're generally going to be promoting the use of the sign language already. And because of the dominance of the spoken language in the community, the children generally have plenty of exposure and opportunities to have exposure to the spoken language. Again, they may need opportunities to interact with peers in sign language so that they can continue to develop as bimodal bilinguals. Outside of the family, you asked about the broader community. And one of the things that's really important there is the recognition of sign languages as natural languages. A lot of people are unaware of the status of natural sign languages. There are a lot of biases or misunderstandings or myths about the nature of sign languages out there. A lot of times people think that sign languages are easier to learn than spoken languages, or they're not subject to critical period effects, meaning it's okay to wait and learn them later, or they think that sign languages they're good only as a stepping stone, but not as a complete language. And those are biases or myths or misunderstandings that need to be addressed. It's important for people to understand that natural sign languages are full and complete languages and are able to serve as a language for education or in fact for art and for all the uses that we have for language. So that's one step, is just to make sure that people in the general community are aware. In some places, official recognition is something that's also very useful. So some sign languages do have an official governmental recognition, depending on a lot of factors about the government, the country, how they recognize languages anyway, things like this. And in many countries, when a sign language has been officially recognized by the government, then this has had good consequences for the community because of resources and because of the recognition that the sign language deserves. So in a lot of contexts, that's actually a good way to promote it as well.
Diane, thank you so much for your generosity, your time, your work, for inspiring so many of us, and for also the ways in which you have supported also sign language communities and many people. And thank you for helping us, all of us, to better understand what bimodal bilingualism is and how to best support the development and maintenance of sign languages inside and outside of the family context. It was an absolute pleasure and a gift to have you, and thank you so much.
Oh, it was my pleasure. So thank you also, and good luck with the rest of the series.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care.
We really hope you enjoyed our 7th helping question. In that Diane fascinating scientific insight and professional experience helps you to better understand what is bimodal bilingualism and some of the things we can all do to support it inside and outside of the family context. Stay tuned for our next episode coming to you on December 20th. We'll get to ask Professor Gigi Luk, Associate Professor in the Department of Educational and Counseling Psychology at McGill University in Canada, our 8th helping question. What is the reality, challenges, trade-offs of learning 2 or more languages in school settings around the world? We look forward to seeing you all back here on December 20th. Also, do not forget to subscribe and to share with us your thoughts, feedback, and comments on any of our social media channels. Thank you for listening and look forward to seeing you back here for our next helping question on December 20th. Bye-bye.